May the words of our mouths and the meditations of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. Good morning.
Good morning.
Every Episcopal diocese and the wider Episcopal Church has a companion relationship with another diocese somewhere in the world, with a third world country, with a developing nation somewhere in the world. And the Diocese of Michigan has a companion relationship with the Diocese of the Dominican Republic. More than a year ago, we began dreaming about what it would be to move beyond praying for our companions and experiencing the relationship through our own diocese with support, to actually going there, to making friends with our Dominican brothers and sisters, to learning with them and working with them to accomplish some of their goals. So we've come back. There are pictures in your bulletin insert, which I hope you will look at to see firsthand, or at least secondhand, what we were able to do. And we've invited some of our young people who were on that trip to share their experiences with you this morning. There were 11 teenagers from this congregation, 4 adults, and then another adult, Eric Travis, who's with us today from the Diocese of Michigan. He's the youth missioner, was with us. But each of the kids here had an expense of their own, $1,000 a person that they brought forward to be able to take this trip. And then the diocese very generously supplemented us for that amount, so that for each child, so that we could go. And we'll be talking in days and months to come about ways that we can creatively finance our mission trips in the future. But it was a priceless experience, and this is what I want to share with you before the girls speak. Well, first of all of you who went on the trip, youth and adults, could you please stand and let us recognize you? We've got these 4, and then Thomas, these kids, Eric. We worked really hard. We also played really hard, and that was important in terms of building these relationships with the young people there. Something happened when we were there that I wasn't necessarily prepared for, and that was there on many occasions I would cry. And I know I cry all the time, but it was it was one of those things that took my breath away. And in reflecting on that with the kids, and I know many of them have cried too, both there and in their own homes, because it's a lot to take in and process. But what I shared with them is that I think sometimes God breaks our hearts so that we can see things the way that God sees them, and experience the sufferings and the hopes of the world that we might not otherwise see. So as odd as it is, I am grateful to God that He broke our hearts a little bit, filled our hearts tremendously, and I hope you will enjoy hearing from Rebecca DeMovelin, Charlotte Froelich, Paige Tornow, and Meredith Mitchell.
Good morning, my name is Rebecca, and I would like to share with you the story of the best week of my life. I'm not one to normally speak in public, but telling my story was an opportunity I could not pass up. I recently returned from Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic, where we spent 8 days repairing a church. I went with a group led by Beth Taylor, Mark Peters, Elizabeth Bridey, Eric Travis, and my father, as well as 10 other teenagers from our church. We began as acquaintances, meeting monthly for almost a year, but nothing could prepare us for the bond we feel after returning from our trip. Not only did we become friends, but a family. Our family consisted of people from the United States, but also many people from the Dominican Republic as well. As soon as we got there, we quickly became friends, and they even taught us a thing or two. At first, we kept to our groups, the Dominicans speaking in Spanish at one table, and the Americans talking in English at another. After work began, the barrier was quickly broken by things like playing Duck Duck Goose with the little kids, singing One Direction and Don't Stop Believing, and even playing charades to figure out what we were trying to say. Let's just say we all had mastered acting out sweeping, painting, and scraping. We became so close with everyone that at the end of the week during our party, Ratife, the foreman of the church, told us that out of all 4 groups who came, we were the most hardworking, the best dancers, and the kindest group. He also told us that we will be the group most missed. After one day of painting the church, we went to a small town inside of Puerto Plata called San Felipe. Only the adult members got out of the bus, but just looking outside the window made quite an impact. We turned off the main road and we could already see a difference. The houses were made of old, broken, and rotten wood with a dirt carpeting. As we drove farther into the city, we saw floodplains filled with water, debris, and even human waste. As we parked the bus, the adult leaders left and we got to take in our surroundings. Looking around and seeing nothing but rotting wood and garbage was quite a sight, and you could tell it surprised almost all of us, as for the bus was silent for a few minutes. When the adult leaders returned, they told us about how Padre, the priest of the church where we were working, had introduced them to many people, and each one wanted to take a picture inside their homes. Their homes that were made of dirt and old wood, their homes that had been damaged because of the storms, their homes that contained almost nothing but a bed. Instead of being ashamed of what they didn't have, they looked at what they did have, and they were so proud of it. They invited strangers in and showed them all that they had, and they were proud of it. It made me really think. I feel so blessed to be able to have a home that has a floor, a sturdy ceiling, and a bed that I don't have to raise because of the rain. Their living standards really make you look at your own life. They make you look at your iPhone and your computer, and even your house and things we take for granted like air conditioning and toilet paper. The hardest part of the trip was not the manual labor. Although scraping paint in the sun for 5 hours, singing the top 40 hits is quite exhausting, but seeing the people we love and care about living in such poor conditions. We always see the pictures on TV of the dying dog or the starving children in Africa and asking people to donate money. You change the channel and it doesn't really affect you. Sure, it's sad, but they try to make you feel guilty, right? Seeing the people we worked with, danced with, and prayed with, living in these conditions was by far the toughest part. Some of them go day to day wondering if they can find clean, drinkable water. They wonder if they will get enough food for their family. These people are our friends, and yet they have nothing. When we left our tennis shoes, our jeans, duffel bags full of clothes, work gloves, anything that we could give. We bagged all these clothes and gave them to a member on the Dominican team. When we gave them to them, it was like Christmas morning. The joy in their eyes was quite a rewarding experience. These people aren't just strangers, they are our family, and it's hard not to give them everything that we had. Out of all 11 of us who went, all 11 of us are talking about signing up again and going again to help even more. On the last day, we interviewed some of the Dominicans for a film project that we hope to show you in the next fall. And I had the task of talking to Stephanie, one of the oldest youth who was especially bonded to us girls. We started by asking her about her education and schooling. She told us that everyone is put through elementary and most of middle school, but lots of kids take a few years during the normal high school period to work and earn money to send their parents to university or college. Then they go through high school, and then they work even more to send themselves through college. She shared with us that the public universities were very bad, and there was no use in going to them unless you wanted a better chance at a manual labor job. Private college is not quite as expensive as it is here, but it's expensive at its own level. The problem for both boys and girls is that there are so few jobs, and so they can't make any money because they can't get the jobs. They can't make money, so they don't go to school, and the cycle is never ending. We asked her if she had all the money in the world, what she would do with it. She told us that she would make more jobs. She told us that in order for her to be happy, she wanted everyone in her community to be happy and for them to have enough money for food and water. Everyone there wanted to succeed as a family, as a group. The last question we asked her was, how does God affect your life? And she told us, He helps me through everything. When I don't know if I will have water or enough food for my family, I pray. When the rain begins to flood our homes, I pray. When I go searching job after job, I pray. When I get turned down every time, I pray. And when I apply to schools, I pray. You are all angels in disguise, and you answered all our prayers. Unfortunately, Stephanie was one of the kids who was much worse off, and so I invite you to pray for her and the rest of the Dominicans during your daily prayers. We now, as a congregation and community, have an opportunity to answer more prayers. This is just the beginning of what we hope will be a long and productive relationship between us and the Dominicans. We invite you to take this chance and become involved in however you feel called. I cannot wait to return next year, and I hope that maybe you can join us. Thank you.
Padre had a dream for all of the youth in San Marcos and San Simon. One part of his dream was that Students there do not have the education like we do here, and it's not as easy as it is here. Although there are public schools, there are some requirements which a lot of people cannot not match. So students there have to have uniforms, they have to be able to provide their own lunches, and they have to have school supplies, and many students can't. So Padre's dream is to incorporate education in the church community so that there's a place for the people to go and to learn and to be part of the church community and still get an education which they wouldn't otherwise.
The second part to Padre's dream would to be to have a technical school for older children so they could learn a trade and get a job, because when you're older you need a job to make money. And the likelihood of them going to university, as Rebecca said, is really slight, so a job would be the best of all worlds. Another goal would be to have an athletic court for kids to have activities to do, keep the youngins out of trouble. So that would be a major part of his dream, and we really hope to get that going. Thank you.
I didn't really write anything down, so as Beth would say, this is coming from my heart, so I want you to listen. But God was such a huge part of our mission trip. I mean, it was a mission trip, of course, but it was a really cool experience because God wasn't really forced upon us, and we weren't being like, okay, we need to stop, and we need to pray about this, and we need to really think about how this connected to God. Because really, especially in a congregation like this, everyone has a different way of worshiping. And in my experience with other retreats, I'm someone who likes to sing and dance out my love for God, but a lot of people don't. And so, in our trip, we had a lot of different experiences with God, and it really helped everyone to get closer to Him. And so, one of the ways that we got closer to God was, of course, working, which we did a lot of. And it wasn't really a lot of building with wood and cinder blocks like we had thought we might be doing, but it was a lot of scraping paint, and a lot of painting, which got really messy. But all the while, it was just, we were doing God's work, and you could feel it with all of the energy with the Dominicans and all of the love that we all shared. And each day we had this little mission journal, and each day would be a new word that we would focus on. And they were words like forgiveness and love and discipline. And one of the days, Daniel and Thomas and I think Matthew were upstairs scraping paint, and they put all the paint chips into this big plastic bag, and Daniel was carrying it down the stairs, and the bag ripped and the paint chips went everywhere. And Thomas said, "Dang, I really wish it was Forgiveness Day." And Mr. DeMoblin said, "Guess what? Every day is Forgiveness Day, so you're all set." And so throughout our trip, we really learned a lot about each other, and we learned a lot about the Dominicans. And what we really did was, we have this big, beautiful home church that we are at every weekend, or most of us every weekend. But also, what we did in the Dominican was we made a new home church, and we made a new place to go back to every year, and we created these relationships with just so much love and so much God that if you have a chance to go, then I highly recommend it, because it was a really awesome thing. So.
To share their experiences with you, we have two of our camp compassioners, Kathleen Robinson and Elizabeth Bryant.
So this past week we went to the Dominican Republic and Puerto Plata. It's on the island of Haiti, like south of Cuba. And we were first going to work on the church in San Marcos, which is where we're going to build a church. We're going to add like electrical work and just like get the roof done, because they also want to build a school there for trade school. But since they ran out of supplies, we worked at another church in Puerto Plata we were scraping the paint off the church, so then we can paint it and make the church livable for the people that go to the church. And a lot of the times when we were scraping, the Padre would come over and he would be like, "This, like, go on, like, go on." I'm like, "Why do you have to go on? Like, there's still paint on the wall." And he'd be like, "This is fine, like, they're meaning you to scrape somewhere else." And so that taught me that the Dominicans there aren't worried about what it looks like, they're worried about the functionality of it, which is different from what the Americans think, that everything has to be perfect, everything has to look like it's 100% all the time. And the Dominicans aren't worried about the look of it, they're worried about the functionality of the church. And then when we were there, we met a lot of people, a lot of like youth, and we were able to get really close to them and talk to them. And we were surprised on how much we were able to relate to them because we listened to the same music as them. They like taught us how to do like the salsa on the during the work that we just like take breaks and do some salsa. And it was like the barrier was there with language, but it wasn't there because we were able to like do hand motions, or we would find someone who knows English and Spanish and be able to translate. Or we had a little pocket dictionary that we would like point to the words there. And it was a really beneficial experience for almost everyone there, I think. And it was just a wonderful experience. Most of the food we ate there was rice and beans. So like every day at lunch we'd have like a giant pot of rice and like some beans and like veggies and then like a meat dish. No, it was very good after a while. And then on the last day, we started to film a movie of the experiences we learned and what we want you to see of what our experience was. And from the people there, we interviewed the Padre and some of the other parishioners there.
One of the questions Beth asked us was, where is God working in us? And the first thing I wanted to say was that this Padre, his name was Padre Bienvenido, which means Father Welcome. And he has this dream. And the dream has two component parts at this time. The first is that there are many children in the Dominican Republic who do not go to school. It's not because schooling isn't free. Schooling is free. But the problem is that you have to fill certain requirements in order to go to school. You have to bring your own food. You have to wear a uniform, and you have to provide your own notebooks, pencils, and paper. And many of these children don't have their own food, don't have the money to purchase these other items. And so one thought he has is for the little town of San Marcos to create a school that's all-inclusive so that the children who can't afford to go to the public schools would come to the new school that he would create and have an opportunity to stay there all day, so the entire school day, and then sort of an aftercare where they would have additional programs. And then the second part of his dream at this time is to try to deal with the enormous levels of unemployment and underemployment, particularly among youth. And so he's hoping that he can open a vocational technical school that would provide training for young people so that they would then have a trade and as a way to try to help them get along with their lives. Our trips to the Dominican Republic will continue, and there's a lot to be said for that because those trips are teaching us about them. And at the same time, those trips are a way for us to give to them of our time, our talents, our donations, etc. However, we also have now a broader vision for what we would like to do, at least with Padre Bienvenido and his parish. And that is that we would like to try to create some kind of sustainable model for this area. And there are many ways in which, of course, economic development occurs, we're going to try to figure out what are the models that might work there, and then try to implement some model so that that would be operating in parallel with our trips of adult and youth to the Dominican Republic. And if there's one thing that I learned in a way that really sunk into my head, it's that when you go on these kinds of mission trips, and particularly if you were to go to the Dominican Republic yourself in the future, it's very, very important to understand that that trip is a partnership. It's not about the Americans coming and saving the day. It's not about, as Kathleen said, you know, getting everything done absolutely perfectly. It's not about completing every single one of the tasks that we set out to do. At the foundation of it all is the importance of the relationship. If you get the relationship right, you get everything right. If you get the relationship wrong, it's just not going to work in the long term. So we did have a terrific trip. We enjoyed ourselves immensely, not just killing ourselves in the 100-degree heat and high humidity, scraping paint on the side of a church, inside as well as outside, but we also had some great fun. We went to the ocean a couple of times. It was just down the street from our hotel, and boy, that cold water felt great. We went zip lining. We went to a national park at the top of a mountain and walked around. It was a little bit too bad the day we selected, though, because we couldn't see anything from the top of the mountain. It was completely clouded in. But that's okay. We still had fun walking around the top and seeing the flora that was up there. And then, as Kathleen mentioned, we had a party on last Sunday night. And during that party, what a hoot, watching Americans try to learn the salsa and merengue. That was really something. So anyway, thank you for your attention this morning. And after the service is over, if you have any questions or you'd like to make some comments, we'd be happy to speak with you.